And first we'll establish a quorum.
Bloom,
Here?
Campos, Gordon,
Here.
Logue, Patterson.
Now we'll proceed with Department of Fish and Wildlife, where our first recommendation is to hold open. Get myself in order here. Issue number 2 is the statewide oil pollution program. Another important issue. Please
Chair,
proceed on that.
If you might, I'd like to invite Mr. Tom Cullen, who's the administrator of our Office of Spill Prevention and Response, to join me. As he's coming up to orient you, what I'd like to do is just walk you through the department's structure around spill management, some of its history since 1991, the basic nuts and bolts of the proposal, and then pause for questions. So, in my judgment, and I confess up front, I have a really hard time, having grown up in the South, pronouncing the word oil, because it comes out a lot like oil. So just bear with me on that. It runs through the whole conversation for me, but I'm trying to get over it. So I also want to thank in advance our long-running collaboration with industry. We have been implementing for many years a program on the marine side. It's done in close collaboration with the oil industry, and we're thankful for that collaboration. So this proposal today, in my judgment, is a long-term sustainable solution that will benefit all Californians. Here's why. It's a proposal about a comprehensive statewide spill program. It's not about a myopic endeavor on any one spill risk, and it's not limited. Rather, it's about a statewide comprehensive program. That's important. Here's the history. So you may know within the Department of Fish and Wildlife, we have our Office of Spill Prevention and Response. It's a standalone unit. I think it was created in 1991. It has its own, if you will, organic statutory authorities. It has its own administrator, Mr. Tom Cullen. It's got its own orientation from that organic statutory set of authorities. Generally speaking, we call it OSPR, but I'll call it our office. This office has statutory responsibility for protecting our state's natural resources from spills and pollutants in state waters. That's kind of its mission. But historically, its statutory funding framework has been focused on marine. That's an important element to draw out today. Now, despite that state funding structure around marine terminals and oil coming in by way of ocean, state law designates the office as the incident commander for all spills, whether they're inland or marine. So what we've seen over time is an office whose programs have been built based on that funding commitment that's westward looking in the marine environment, about 160 positions, about 30 million a year, and far less ability to look eastward inland, arguably a larger territory, and best prepare for spill risk there. And that, therein, lies the problem. Okay? So over time, this office has principally been funded by something called the Oil Spill Prevention Administrative Fund. We collect a 6.5 cent per barrel revenue on marine oil coming in through marine terminals. Now that 6.5 cents, as you know, is already set to decrease to 5 cents by January 1, 2015. And we already have a structural deficit just around the 6.5 cents. Okay. At the same time, we manage with UC Davis something called the, here's the word problem, Oiled Wildlife Care Network. We have about 30 facilities around the state headed by UC Davis. This is a universally recognized program to deal with wildlife who are harmed by spills. That program is funded by our Oil Spill Response Trust Fund. Its historical funding structure has been to fund it off the interest from that fund. The interest is no longer sufficient to cover the costs. And lastly, we have this historical structure, but we also have a very modern shift going on. The market is shifting on how we transport oil and where California's sources of oil are coming from. They're moving away from coming into this state by way of ocean and marine terminals, and they're moving towards domestic distribution primarily by rail. And we know that our current kind of several million barrel a year coming in by rail component of distribution and delivery is rapidly going to shift, we think, by as early as 2016 to about 150 million barrels coming in eastward. Okay, so there you have our history, a market shift, and here's the actual nuts and bolts of the proposal in front of you. Our department and our office and the budget in front of you proposes to create a program to protect all of our waters across all of our state that are at risk from spill. Full stop. We propose to take the 6.5 cent fee I described, hold it constant, but apply it to all avenues in which oil is coming into the state rather than just through the marine lens. This would allow us to add about 38 new positions, create that comprehensive program. We also propose to fund the Oiled Wildlife Care Network and expand that program inland, which we think is a literal win-win for all Californians. We have a complicated oil distribution system in this state. This proposal is responsive to that complication, and it's comprehensive. We need to stop thinking only about our marine front and manage the risk of spill statewide, irrespective of geography, and more equitably as to the emerging risks. This is not about a jurisdictional grab by our office or our department. This is not about trying to interfere with preemption. You may hear some say this field is fully occupied by federal regulators. Having litigated in my past life preemption cases, I don't believe that will be the case. In fact, there's a body of law that's robust around federalism in environmental law, where each entity has an appropriate role in a broader scheme to regulate. Here's what our focus is about. It is not about the U.S. Department of Transportation's focus on rail safety. It is not about the California Public Utility Commission's agent status applying federal laws to ensure state interest on safety. It is not about the area of expertise for state fire marshals around pipeline safety. It is not about well production that's best managed by the Division of Oil, Gas, Geothermal Resources. It's only about spill and impact to natural resources. That's our area of expertise, and that's what this proposal is about.
Yes, I think LAO might have some comments on this too. I don't know whether you want to wait for that or...
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Anton Favarini-Chorba with the LAO. We concur with the department's comments on the need to expand prevention and readiness activities to inland activities because of the projected shift in the oil market. We do have several recommendations on this issue, and the first one would be to we recommend that you amend the trailer bill language to direct the department to develop a risk-based fee for its to support its oil spill prevention program, and That is the reason that we're recommending that is because this flat per barrel fee of 6.5 cents on all oil doesn't capture all of the different sources of risk from an oil spill. And one of the ways you can think about funding a regulatory program is by charging people in contribution in relation to their contribution to harm. Oil spill risk is driven by the likelihood that a spill will occur, and that can vary based on the type of transportation mode. Oil spill risk also depends on the ecosystem that the spill occurs in. So if you have a route that's going by a particularly sensitive ecosystem and there's a spill there, that damage is going to be greater than if a spill occurs elsewhere. So with that in mind, our recommendation is for the department to consider some of these factors, and there are a variety of ways that this could be done, such as perhaps a surcharge on certain routes or other options. Our second recommendation is that the language also be amended to authorize the department to charge fees in an amount that will raise the amount of revenue needed to support the annual budget operations, and that is covered in your staff recommendation. In part, this is because the current proposal of the flat per barrel fee actually doesn't fully address the structural deficit in the current year that Director Bonham referenced. Because of that structural deficit, we're also recommending that you fund these positions on a half-year basis, and that would result in a reduction of $1.6 million in the appropriation. That would leave a healthier fund balance in the fund. Right now, the proposal would eat into the fund balance and leave it at about a balance with about 4% of the total revenue. So if you're off a little bit on how much revenue comes in, you could end up with a fund deficit there. And with that in mind, that concludes our remarks, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And I don't know if Mr. Patterson was going to get to this, but if it's an answer to his question or you want to get to it after that, I would be interested in hearing your response to the LAO's comments and the staff recommendation.
It is connected, I think. Just to piggyback a bit on it, I'm finding it difficult to understand that this is a flat fee for state, in-state oil producers for a risk that is not theirs. It goes on in a railroad car. It goes into a tanker. It runs on rails. It seems to me it's pointing to their commodity and suggesting that the commodity in and of itself, by the fact that it exists and would create some problem if spilled, is somehow directly connected to their risk and their responsibility, when I think it's just the opposite. The risk on the rail is the rail bed. The risk on the rail is the manner in which the railroads run the railroads. And it seems to me that if we're going to do this, which I think we need to do it, but I object to the methodology with respect to connecting a flat fee on the in-state production of oil for a risk that is, in fact, a railroad transportation risk.
Thank you, Assembly Member. Let me take your comment and respond this way, but ask the administrator to correct anything I may get wrong or overlook, and then also take up 2 of the 3 recommendations that the LAO mentioned. So I will remind those that since the 90s, we've been managing a very effective, I believe well-regarded, collaborative program around managing the risk of spill in our marine environment. And there, as I understand it, the way the revenue collection is structured, it's not as to the owner of the ship. That's the analogy to the discussion you raised around whether it's most appropriate to assign risk liability to the owner of the rail car or the owner of the product in the rail car. So on the marine front, the risk and the relationship as to our unit, as I understand it, runs to the oil. So now as to risk-based, in our judgment, I think we disagree with the recommendation on that front by the LAO because we believe volume is risk-based, transport method is risk-based, and the prospect of creating a regime that literally accounts for, quote, all risks is both infeasible and likely to draw strong opposition and take quite some time to implement when we know the risk is real today, and we may not have that luxury of time. I will also say the idea of approaching this from our view as a statewide program is equitable. That's actually, in our judgment, equity for the way we manage oil in this state. As to the ability to adjust the fee administratively, we're appreciative that that shows up in the staff recommendation. Administrator, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Perfect, thank you. Mr. Gordon.
Thank you. Let me first say that I fully support the expansion of the fee to rail transport. And while I'm intrigued with the idea of more refined risk-based approach, I don't think that's something you move too quickly or easily. And I'm not inclined to support that at the moment. I'd rather see us expand the program to the entire state and to using the rail, and let's see what happens once we've done that. Then maybe at that point we can look further at this. I've been struggling a little bit with the issue of allowing an administrative adjustment of the fee, because I'm trying to understand, what the impact is to the structural deficit with the expansion to additional source of income through the rail, kind of how that would look, what that means, and the fact that it takes that responsibility away from the legislature to look at that. I suppose, though, as I look closely at the staff recommendation that we have, is that there is a limit on what can be adjusted administratively, and that limit is what we approve, would be approving in the state budget. So I assume then that essentially, while we don't specifically approve, in the future wouldn't specifically be approving the fee, by approving the budget, we've essentially approved the fee once we know, what the amount of the program is. So been struggling with it, but I think I can probably get myself around to supporting the staff recommendation.
Well, let me just add a comment. I think there's some pondering going on of what is a relatively recent recommendation, but to me it's one that makes sense. Clearly, I think there's general agreement that there is a need to shift the model here, and I think it's hard to argue that point, given the marketplace shifting. But just as there is a structural deficit with the flat fee amount now, it seems to me that by limiting the amount to the relationship, there is really no relationship between the amount of 6.5 cents per gallon and the actual cost of providing the service that the department needs to provide. And the staff recommendation, I think, is an effort to align the actual cost with the programmatic needs. And that makes a lot of sense to me. So I think there are some very legitimate questions on both sides of this right now, and my suggestion is that we hold this open to continue the dialogue a little bit more and see if we can can resolve some of those questions and get this to a point where there's more general agreement. If there's no issue with that, then I think that's what we'll do.
If you want to hold it open, that's fine with me. I'd also be prepared to vote on it, but holding open is fine.
I think we'll hold it open and bring it back. I want to make sure there's a comfort level with it.
Mr. Chair, is
Yes.
public comment?
Oh, yes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir. Brian White, on behalf of the Western States Petroleum Association, we appreciate the discussion. A lot of good input here, and we appreciate you wanting to hold the item open as well. We think maintaining the integrity of the program, particularly with respect to marine, is absolutely essential. As Director Bonham has stated, the industry has a lot of experience working with DFW and OSPR on maintaining the integrity of the OSPR program. We want to make sure that that program is whole with respect to marines. We also think that the Oil Wildlife Care Network is very important as well, because for those companies that have contingency plans, they rely on the Oil Wildlife Care Network to meet their regulatory requirements. We think the 6.5 cents per barrel fee that the administration is proposing, that's, as the LAO noted, it's unlikely that's going to be sufficient to address the structural gap. We've had discussions with the administration about actually going a little bit higher than that, somewhere between 7 to 8 cents, so that we don't have to come back year after year and have this discussion, and to make sure that the marine program is made whole. Where we do have some concerns on the issue of crude by rail, the WSPA members absolutely agree it's an important issue. They think public safety is first and foremost, but we do have concerns about expanding the per barrel fee to an inland program when we don't know the entire comprehensive regulatory gaps that might exist. Local responders are involved in this discussion as well, railroads, and the oil industry. I think there needs to be a comprehensive discussion before we try to expand that fee to make it a crude-only fee, essentially, to pay for an entire rail program. There are other materials that transfer by rail, and we think that that should be looked at. So again, we thank you for holding the item open, and we look forward to continued discussions.
Thank you.
Morning, Assembly members. My name is Brian Mukes, Marine Program Manager of Los Angeles Waterkeeper, formerly called Santa Monica Baykeeper, if you're familiar with that. Just for context of who we are, as you may not know, it's part of the Coastkeeper Alliance and International Waterkeeper Alliance. It's dedicated to protecting and restoring water qualities, restoring aquatic habitats, marine habitats. We have a few staff, a lot of volunteers, and over 3,000 members. We have a lot of community-based programs. We like to get the community involved, represent community interests, environmental interests. We do coastal, inland, industrial water quality monitoring. We do MPA Watch, our marine protected areas. We do kelp forest restoration. We are actively representing environmental interests on the Los Angeles Long Beach Area Committee for Local Spill Response, LA Long Beach Harbor Safety Committee for Spill Prevention, and also the State Department of Fish and Wildlife Office of Spill Prevention and Response Technical Advisory Committee. That's a lot of words, but all of those groups have one thing in common. They're all marine-based. We need a statewide program. LA Waterkeeper is LA County. We have a lot of oil-based facilities, a lot of oil being transferred in and around Los Angeles County, from the ports to the offshore lightering to the Chevron El Segundo Marine Terminal. But that's all marine. We also have now a lot of pipeline and rail oil coming in, almost exponentially increasing. So as we look towards the ocean, we have all this rail coming in from behind us. And it's very concerning. We have a lot of neighborhoods, we have a lot of aquatic and habitats that could be severely impacted by this increased risk of spills. So what we did is we put together a petition really quickly. As of 24 hours ago, we have a modest 46 signatures, so imagine 50 people behind me ceding their time to this effort, and I'll get back to you guys here. And just wanted to say we strongly support I'll bring it over to you. We strongly support OSPR's budget provisions with the administrative adjustment as well. Strongly support it. Thank you.
Thank you, and please let Liz Crossan know I'm still hurting over the name change.
I will.
Santa Monica Baykeeper to L.A., for those of you who are...
Good morning, committee chair and committee members. Paige Brokaw on behalf of the San Francisco Baykeeper. I'll keep my comments brief. We are supportive of the administration's proposal to make improvements to the Marine Oil Spill Prevention and Response Program and expand it statewide. We are very interested to see the Oil Wildlife Care Network, which the previous speaker touched on, fully funded and broadened to address oil spills, both coastal and inland. So we look forward to working with the administration and the legislature on the proposal. Thank you.
Mr. Chair and members, Mark Fenstermaker here on behalf of Audubon, California. Just want to express our support for the proposal. Thank you.
Bill Alio for Environmental Working Group and also doing a Me Too for the Natural Resources Defense Council. We support the augmentation. It's really important as this Bakken shale comes in through rail. We're concerned when Sacramento County transportation health officials were taken by surprise that this oil was coming right through here. There is some merit to the LAO's idea long-term about weighing risk, because some of these rail cars will go right by sources of drinking water or through particularly sensitive ecological areas. But in the meantime, we support the staff and LAO recommendation to give some flexibility to assess the fee where it's needed most. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. My name is Annie Pham, and I'm with Sierra Club, California. We're here in support of the proposal. We're not very pleased with more crude oil being transported by rail, but we see that this is a first step, and we urge that the legislature keep this conversation going and have a comprehensive plan that protects public health and the environment. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair, members. My name is Mike Sicardi. I'm the director of California's Oil Wildlife Care Network. We're supportive of legislative's continuing efforts to provide a stable funding source for our program. As Director Bonham indicated, we are the world's preeminent oil wildlife readiness and response program, so it would certainly be a shame for that to be defunded as of July of this year. So we're supportive of continuing efforts to provide us that funding source, and look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members, Ted Toppin for the California Association of Professional Scientists, here in strong support of the administration's proposal as it is proposed. California state scientists thinks it's long overdue that we make this a comprehensive statewide program. Applying it to marine and not to inland is just short-sighted and has been for a long time. We're fully in support of taking these actions now to fix it, whether it comes in through a marine terminal or is by rail or pipeline. The threat to the waterways of the U.S. are the same, and we should address that with this proposal by expanding it to inland activities. CAPS would not be supportive of anything that would delay implementation of this proposal, so we're a little concerned about risk-based analysis. We'd be happy to contemplate that, but not if it is at the expense of delaying implementation of this budget year. And we would absolutely oppose efforts to delay hiring folks to do this work. This work needs to be done as soon as possible, as it should have been done in previous years. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that concern, and I'll just help close this out by saying one of the interesting things I learned from the dialogue that we've had in recent days is that while the marketplace is shifting, the quantity of oil that we're dealing with is not likely to shift dramatically because we're limited by our refining capacity in the state. So I think that's an important thing for people to keep in mind. I don't know if you all have anything else you want to add on the topic, but all right.